how is Agile training different from project management training? Projects tend to have a short to medium term view. There are some projects like going to Mars, for example, that would be long term, but by and large, they're shorter than 18 months. And if you find problems in your organization that are slowing down your project, there tends not to be so much appetite to solve those problems because your project is going to be live before that date, and why you're trying to boil the ocean would be the general approach. And there also tends to be a focus in projects on getting dedicated teams for those projects to deliver them. And those teams, by the way, have to go through the Coleman phases: forming, storming, norming, performing. Oxford Review looked at that recently, and it still stands apparently. They also have to go through the change curve as well. When our performance is here, we want to get to here. We think it's kind of like a straight journey, but it's not. Actually, performance can get worse first before it gets better, and then you eventually recover. And you have lots of those change curves as well, with every little change that you have as you go along. As you can imagine, a project, if it has a fixed date, and you've got the Tuckman phases, you've got the J curve, and you've got problems that are long-term for the organization, that leads to, whether we like it or not, within a project, short to medium-term context with a fixed date, for example. Projects don't have to have fixed dates, but most of them are. And when you have that situation, you tend to have a lack of balance of the short term and the long term. That's the key difference. Agile focuses on balancing the short term with the long term. We can milk the cow we already have right now, but we also need to be thinking about the long-term effect on our customers. Are we going to have more complaints? Are there going to be more calls to the call center because people don't understand our product and so on? Are we worried about failure demand, which is doing something not right for the customer, giving the customer kind of a bad experience in order to deliver something on time? So projects tend to have very good business cases in terms of value and so on, but usually once they start, it all becomes time, scope, and cost. Now, there are some wonderful project managers in the world, and so I don't want to tear them off with one brush. I was one of those project managers myself. But I can say, as one who came from that world, who's gone to the Agile world, roughly the same amount of time in both. The big differences, apart from the short term and the long term, would be in Agile, there'll be a focus on flow. How can we, instead of starting everything at the same time, and the sooner we start, the sooner we finish kind of attitude, which actually is wrong, we're actually much more comfortable leaving stuff on a thing called a backlog or a list of things to do. And we focus and finish. Scrum is very good at that. Kanban's very good at that. There are other approaches quite good at that as well. And being really focused on getting things through is really, really key. The other thing that Agile brings to the table is the appreciation for complexity. In fact, I would argue that complexity is the business case for agility, because when you don't know what you don't know, how can you have a Gantt chart to say when it'll all be done? So we need something that's a bit more collaborative, a bit more about talking to the customers, and less about, going to the whiteboard and agreeing amongst ourselves what we should do instead of actually talking to the customers. Because you know what? Customers don't even know what they want. So how do we know what they want? And the more often we talk to the customers, the more we realize that we might have got it wrong, what the customer might really, really want. And so focus on flow, focus on complexity, but also in Agile leadership, because I mentioned at the very start of my answer that in projects with a short to medium term view, there's less appetite to fix problems in the company that or the organization that are slowing down the teams. There might be processes, workflows, systems that are just not lending themselves to teams being agile at all, and actually slowing things down and actually creating some friction and tension, and not really helping people to feel inspired and deliver value with really high quality and so on. And so the lack of focus on fixing long-term problems in projects that I tend to see, I tend to see the opposite in Agile, where there is Agile leadership going on. That said, Agile is only cottoning onto that in the last few years, that Agile leaders have a role in fixing problems, decluttering workflows, processes, and systems. But to give you a really short answer, it would be the focus on balancing the short term and the long term. That's the key difference between Agile and traditional project management.